Robert Lewis escorted Samuel Carter through the bank doors under the eyes of dozens of customers. Derek Collins stood behind them and said coldly, "This bank is not a shelter from the rain." Samuel's old canvas briefcase slipped from his hand and struck the sidewalk. Papers scattered through the freezing rain, but Derek still closed the glass doors behind him. Samuel knelt down. He did not reach for the check first, even though rainwater was already smearing the ink near one corner. Instead, he quickly rescued a waterproof envelope containing a yellowed letter from his late wife. 40 minutes earlier, Samuel had stepped off a bus in Philadelphia's old business district. He wore a work coat patched at the elbows and shoes still marked with construction dust from his years as a builder. On the bus, Samuel had given his seat to a woman carrying a baby. When her grocery bag tore, he bent down, gathered every container that rolled across the floor, and helped tie the bag closed with a piece of string from his briefcase. Franklin National occupied an 8-story stone building that Samuel still called by its old name, the Carter Building. Before entering, he stopped to examine a small crack near the base of the wall. "The eastern pipe is leaking again," he murmured, like someone who knew every brick in the building. Inside his canvas briefcase were an appointment confirmation, documents establishing a charitable fund, a tax identification number, and a certified check issued by Carter Community Properties. Samuel had come to open the Lillian Carter Community Assistance Fund, a dream he and his wife had never been able to complete together. Even though he had an appointment, Samuel allowed an elderly man struggling with the cash machine to go first. "You may go ahead, I can wait." Maya Patel noticed him from the counter and approached. "Are you Samuel Carter? I saw your name on the appointment schedule." She invited him to sit and began reviewing his documents. But Derek stopped when he passed and noticed Samuel's worn coat, old shoes, and canvas briefcase. "What kind of transaction are you processing?" "He is opening an account for a community fund. Mr. Carter has all the required documents and a certified check." Derek looked at the amount on the check, then at Samuel. "That amount does not match the person carrying it." Maya checked the issuing company. "Carter Community Properties is a legitimate business. I only need to call and confirm." That was Derek's first chance to stop. Instead, he placed his hand on the documents. "Do not call anyone. The bank received a warning about fraudulent corporate checks last week." Samuel kept his voice calm. "I have an appointment. You may contact the person responsible or provide me with a formal written refusal." The internal phone rang. An employee reported that the regional office was waiting for a representative of the Carter Family Trust to attend a meeting about the building lease. Derek glanced at the clock. He assumed the person they were waiting for must be Evelyn Carter, dressed in an expensive business suit. The name Samuel Carter did not make him reconsider. Maya spoke again. "The appointment says Samuel Carter, Community Trust. He may be the person they are expecting." That was Derek's second chance. "Return to your counter," he ordered. He turned toward Samuel, accused him of disrupting bank operations, and claimed he had refused to leave the transaction area. Samuel had never raised his voice, but Derek called security as though the elderly man were a threat. Robert approached. After hearing Maya's explanation, he suggested, "We could let him wait in the lobby while the documents are verified. It is raining outside." Derek lowered his voice so Robert would understand the consequences. "If you refuse my order, I will report you for insubordination." Samuel stood and picked up his briefcase himself. "You do not need to lose your job because of me." Before leaving, he looked at Derek. Would you treat me this way if I were wearing a better suit? Derek did not answer. He only ordered Robert to lock the doors as soon as Samuel stepped outside. On the sidewalk, Samuel's briefcase fell and the documents scattered through the rain. Robert bent down to help, then placed his own umbrella in Samuel's hand. "I am sorry." Samuel did not blame the security guard. When Robert picked up a brass key, he briefly noticed a brick symbol and the words 1927 engraved into the metal. He did not understand their meaning, so he returned the key to the briefcase. A company car stopped in front of the building. Evelyn Carter stepped out to attend the lease renewal meeting. She was about to walk directly into the lobby when she froze. Her father was sitting on a stone bench, completely soaked, while documents bearing the name of the Lillian Carter Fund lay across the wet sidewalk. "Dad!" Evelyn ran toward him and knelt beside him. After Robert explained what had happened, she looked through the glass doors at Derek. "The man you just threw outside is the person who decides whether this bank will continue leasing this building." Before Derek could understand what was happening, Samuel picked up the brass key and asked, "Before we discuss the building, I want to know how many other people have been treated the way I was." Evelyn looked at her father's soaked clothes, then turned toward the glass doors. "The meeting is over. I will send the lease termination notice today." Samuel placed a hand on his daughter's arm. "If the bank closes, innocent employees will lose their jobs, and the people who live nearby will lose a branch they still need. We must understand what happened first." At that moment, Thomas Blake arrived. He saw Samuel sitting on the stone bench and assumed he was only a customer making a complaint. "Sir, we will have someone handle your situation after the meeting." Evelyn stood upright. "This is Samuel Carter, my father and the principal trustee of the Carter Family Trust. His signature determines whether Franklin National's lease will be renewed." Thomas fell silent. Inside the bank, Derek immediately changed his explanation. "No one knew who he was. I was only handling a suspicious transaction under fraud prevention procedures." Samuel asked, "Which procedure requires an unverified customer to be thrown outside into the rain?" Maya stepped away from the counter, despite Derek's warning look. "I confirmed that the check came from a legitimate company. Mr. Collins refused to let me call the issuing company or the specialist responsible for the appointment." Samuel did not return to the branch manager's office. He led everyone to the top floor. At the end of the hallway stood an unmarked wooden door. The brass key engraved with a brick and the number 1927 fit the lock. The door opened into a conference room covered with a thin layer of dust. A photograph on the wall showed Samuel and Lillian decades earlier, both wearing work clothes as they renovated the Carter building with their own hands. Samuel did not mention the value of the property. He placed Lillian's letter on the table. "I came to the bank today to open a fund for housing, medication, and emergency expenses. I did not come to conduct a secret test of the employees." In the letter, Lillian had written that no one should lose a home because of the worst month of their life. She dreamed of a place where families facing a crisis could ask for help without being treated with contempt. Thomas ordered the technology department to preserve the security footage, appointment records, emails, and complaint data. Evelyn wanted Derek suspended immediately, but Thomas refused to reach a conclusion before reviewing the evidence. "I will not protect him, but the investigation must be independent enough that no one can dismiss the result as an order from the building's owner." The lobby recording was played. Samuel had never raised his voice, threatened anyone, or disrupted operations. He had presented every required document. Derek had stopped Maya from verifying them only after looking at Samuel's clothes and briefcase. Another troubling sign appeared when Maya opened a list of complaint codes she had saved on her phone. 42 cases were marked as resolved. Many involved elderly customers, people without housing, or customers who used only basic accounts. Derek immediately replied, "If the system says they were resolved, then they were handled." Maya opened the access history. "Most were closed through your account within minutes. There are no notes from phone calls, response letters, or follow-up appointments." Robert stood near the door with both hands clenched. Finally, he spoke. "Mr. Carter was not the first person ordered outside. I remember at least 6 cases during the past 3 months. Most involved elderly people or people who appeared to have no home." Derek turned toward him. "Do not turn ordinary security incidents into an accusation of discrimination." Robert lowered his head. "I followed the orders, but staying silent did not make those orders right." Thomas ordered the internal emails opened. One instruction from Derek appeared on the screen. "Reduce service time for customer groups that do not generate revenue." Attached was a tracking sheet titled "Low-Value Walk-ins." Employees had been instructed to delay those customers, redirect them to online services, or limit the time spent assisting them. Derek continued defending the decision. "It was a staffing strategy. This branch has the highest profits and the lowest average waiting time in the region." Samuel looked directly at him. "Did waiting times improve because your employees worked faster? Or because you made poor people leave?" Evelyn opened the current lease agreement. One clause required the bank to provide equal community banking services to residents around the Carter building. Derek's instructions could represent a violation of the lease. But responsibility did not end at the branch. Thomas discovered that the regional office had received 2 warnings from Maya and sent both complaints back to Derek to investigate himself. He removed his glasses. "I saw that the branch was closing an unusually high percentage of complaints, but I did not investigate because the profit reports looked impressive. The failure of oversight does not belong only to Mr. Collins." The next preliminary report left the room silent. 63 customers had been marked as eligible for online service only, even though many did not own suitable devices, did not know how to use the technology, or needed personal assistance because of their age. Samuel opened the list and studied each name. "None of the people on this list owns the building. That is exactly why they need protection the most." When Thomas ordered a complete review of 2 years of fees and complaints, the screen displayed a much larger number. Hundreds of fees had been charged to the customers Derek described as having no value. The emergency review was held in the conference room on the top floor. Samuel, Evelyn, Thomas, Maya, Robert, Derek, the compliance team, and Franklin National's legal representatives sat around the table while Lillian's letter remained inside its waterproof envelope. Derek was allowed to explain first. "My instructions were only intended to reduce waiting times and prevent fraud. Every decision was based on operational efficiency, not age or personal circumstances." The compliance team compared the security footage, appointment records, emails, complaint codes, and account activity one by one. Every independent source revealed the same pattern. Samuel stood and placed the brass key on the table. "I have final authority over the building lease. but I will not use my ownership of this property to force the bank to fire anyone. He requested an independent conclusion that would examine not only Derek's actions, but also the regional managers who had ignored earlier warnings. Maya presented the 2 emails she had sent to Thomas's office. In both messages, she warned that elderly customers and people with basic accounts were being denied in-person assistance. Both emails had been sent back to Derek and then marked as resolved. Robert confirmed that he had repeatedly been ordered to remove customers before their documents were reviewed. The security footage showed that Derek selected people based on their clothing, age, and appearance, not because they had behaved dangerously or presented evidence of fraud. More internal emails appeared on the screen. Derek had ordered employees to prioritize customers with large balances, delay people with basic accounts, and close complaints without contacting the person who submitted them. The low-value walk-ins list had been updated every week as a performance measure. A new discovery made the room even more uncomfortable. The audit found hundreds of hardship fees that had never been reviewed for possible waivers, even though the customers met the bank's assistance requirements. Many had been charged because their accounts ran short after paying for medicine or rent. Derek continued looking at the financial reports. This branch has the highest profit in the region. The numbers prove that my strategy worked. Thomas answered in a low voice. Profit earned by driving vulnerable customers away is not an achievement. After reviewing the preliminary evidence, the compliance department suspended Derek immediately. He was required to surrender his management badge and system access in front of the investigation team. Samuel did not mock him, and Evelyn did not turn the moment into a public act of revenge. Franklin National was informed that the lease had not been terminated, but the renewal process would be suspended. The bank had 90 days to prove that meaningful changes had been made through results that could be independently verified. The conditions were clearly recorded. The bank had to conduct an independent audit of all fees and complaints, refund improper charges, eliminate the low-value list, create a complaint channel outside the branch, and stop evaluating employees only by profit. A senior customer assistance department also had to be created on the ground floor. It would provide in-person service, large print forms, fraud prevention counseling, and help with using technology. Samuel added one more condition. Frontline employees who did not participate in the wrongdoing must keep their jobs and receive new training. Fixing a system does not mean putting everyone out of work. After the formal investigation, Derek was terminated for discrimination, retaliation against employees, and falsifying complaint records. He was not publicly humiliated or stripped of anything beyond the consequences required by policy and law. Thomas received a formal management warning, was placed under performance supervision, and had to report directly on the progress of the reforms. His cooperation with the investigation did not erase his responsibility for the 2 warnings his office had ignored. Maya was not immediately promoted to branch manager simply because she had helped Samuel. She became a community assistance specialist, completed management training, and earned a promotion 6 months later based on her work. Robert kept his job. He helped create a process allowing security employees to refuse orders that appeared discriminatory and request review by an independent supervisor. The affected customers were contacted, given apologies, refunded improper fees, and restored to full access to in-person services. After Franklin National met the required conditions, the Carter family renewed the lease for a shorter term with annual reviews. Samuel opened the Lillian Carter Community Assistance Fund inside the same branch that had thrown him out. An independent board managed the fund, which provided help with rent, medicine, and emergency expenses. Franklin National contributed additional funding but was not allowed to use the fund's name in advertising until the results of the reform had been made public. 6 months later, Samuel returned by bus. He still wore the coat patched at the elbows and waited in line like everyone else. Maya was patiently helping an elderly customer complete a form. Robert opened the door for a man carrying an old bag without judging his appearance. None of the new customers recognized Samuel as the owner of the building. He smiled because, this time, it no longer mattered. Inside the community room, Lillian's letter had been framed beside the words, "No one should lose a home because of the worst month of their life." Samuel did not need the bank to know that he owned the building. He only needed to make sure that the next person who walked through those doors would be treated with respect, even if they owned nothing at all. What would you have done in Samuel's place? Would you have ended the lease and forced the bank to leave, or allowed it to stay under strict reform conditions? Share your choice and continue following Stewart stories. Stories of love, hope, and justice. And